Today, I am telling the story of a man who fought with everything he had to protect his people but still lost everything in one night. He made a vow with his last breath to come back stronger, and when he did, not even an army could stop him. Before I get into it, if you are new here, please kindly like, subscribe, and hit on the notification box. This helps the channel grow. Listen closely because every African tales carries a lesson. This is African Tales by Bams. Let's get into the main story.
Before the name Kael existed, there was Dio, a farmer, a husband, a father, a simple man who loved his people with everything he had. Every man in Isle trained for war alongside farming. Peace was never permanent. Dio was not the biggest or the loudest warrior, but he never missed a day and never gave less than everything. At home he had his wife, his children, and a life precious enough to die for. They had survived war before. 3 times enemies came and were pushed back. But the 4th time was different. A warlord named Gorko, who had already destroyed 3 kingdoms, arrived with no warning on a night with no moon. Ariel was not enough. No village was enough for what Gorko brought. Deo fought until he had nothing left. But one man cannot stop a tide. When it was over, he was the only one breathing in the ash of everything he loved. His wife, his children, his people, all gone in one night. He lay in the ash, looked up at the empty sky, and made a vow. If I am given another chance, I will come back stronger. I will not let this happen again. In my next life, I will be enough. A great spirit in the ancient forest heard him, and for the first time, it chose to answer. Generations passed. Ire grew into a prosperous nation. In this new age lived Chief Okonkwo, a wealthy and respected man, but he and his wife Folasade had one wound no wealth could heal. They had prayed for a child for 17 years. Then one evening Folasade felt something change. A child was coming. What she did not know was that this was not just any child. This was a soul returning to finish something left undone. The night Kael was born, thunder rolled and rain fell heavy across the community. The women in the birthing room felt the moment he drew his first breath. Everything went still. Folasade looked at her son and knew. His eyes were too calm for a newborn, the eyes of someone who had been here before. In the dark places of the world, ancient shadow things felt it too. They turned toward that compound, and they were afraid. They named him Kael. He walked at 3 weeks. He grew faster than every child around him in every way. Chief Okonkwo smiled at the stories. People told him about his son and said nothing. But at night, he would stand in the doorway of his son's room and feel something he could not explain. By the time Kael was 12, nobody could pretend anymore. A massive serpent entered the compound heading toward the children playing near the far wall. Servants ran. Guards grabbed weapons. Kael walked toward it. Calm, he raised one hand and spoke. You do not belong here. These are my people. Go back to the forest and do not return. The serpent lowered its head, turned, and left. An old guard who had survived 3 wars whispered, What kind of being is this child? Dark creatures came for him, one by one, after that. Each one was defeated, and sent back carrying his footprint permanently marked on them. A warning to everything in the dark. Do not come here. Kael trained with the warriors, but always held back from his true limit. He worked the farm and listened more than he spoke. But alone before dawn, he would feel the memory that was not from this life. A burning village, a vow, a weight carried across lifetimes. King Ozugo had swallowed 12 nations in 20 years. When his envoy arrived in Isle de Mile demanding full surrender, fear spread through the community. But when the soldiers moved aggressively toward Chief Okonkwo on the road, Kawa stepped forward. He gave them one choice. They chose wrong. 60 soldiers went down in minutes. None dead, but none standing. Ozugo heard the report and called his sorcerers. They found an old legend about a man whose power was tied to his hair. Cut the hair, end the man. Ozugo sent someone inside the community to do the deed and ordered the full army to march at dawn. What the sorcerers did not know was that the hair was never the source. Kael was the source. Cutting it would not weaken him. It would remove the last thing holding him back. Samano crept into the compound at night, and Kaesel Zivul Suwal Pendu. He did not stir. The drums of the approaching army woke him before any guard could. He reached up and felt the absence. He was still for a moment. Then he stood, and those who saw him said something shifted in the air around him. Every door he had kept shut his whole life swung open at once. He was not angry. He looked like a man finally free of a weight he had carried too long. He walked out of the gates alone toward an army of thousands. He stopped on the road and spoke loud enough for the front lines to hear. This does not have to end in war, but if you take one more step forward, I will not stop. They laughed. He took one step. The ground cracked beneath his foot. Soldiers in the front line stumbled from the vibration. Ozugo sent his champion, the giant 7 feet tall, never defeated. The giant swung his massive club with full force. The space where Kael stood was empty. Kael was beside him. The throw completed. The giant hit the ground. The entire army went silent. Ozugo sent them anyway. Kael moved through thousands of soldiers, like a storm through dry grass. Continuous and unstoppable. The army broke and ran. War banners fell in the dirt. Drums abandoned. A force that had never been stopped by one man who did not even use everything he had. Ozugo stood his ground at the rear. Then Kael was in front of him. You had everything, Kael said, and you spent it destroying people who only wanted to live. If you ever move against free people again, I will come to your capital and bring it down. This is the last time I say this to you. Ozugo looked at him for a long time. Then he bowed his head. Word spread fast. Nations stopped their tribute to Ozugo. Communities breathed again. Kael became general of Ur. No land, no gold for himself, just the right to stand between his people and whatever came for them. In the quieter days he met a woman named Lyra. She was not impressed by his legend. That was the first thing he loved about her. They married under the great tree of Irel. 3 children came. Zara, the eldest, could see things before they happened. Her eyes would go distant and return carrying knowledge of the future. Aiden, the son, broke practice weapons as a child just by holding them. By 7 he could move what 3 men could not. Nayo, the youngest, spoke to animals, and they listened. Birds rested on her hands. The forest organized around her. When she walked through it, 3 children, 3 gifts. The vow made in ash had not ended with one man. It had become a family. Then, on a still night, Kael dreamed. In the dream was a vast and ancient presence. Not a figure, just the feeling of something very old. You have done what you came to do, it said. Who are you? Kael asked. I am the one that heard you the night you made your vow. I am the one that said yes. Why me? Because you did not vow for power. You vowed for your people. Power for people becomes protection. Power for yourself becomes Ozugo. Your children carry it forward now. It was never just for you. The dream faded. Kael said thank you. The presence said only it was deserved. The story of Kael does not end with a crown or a throne. It ends with a man at the edge of his farm at dusk, one hand pressed to the earth, watching the sun go down on a world his people can live in safely. He came back to keep a promise. He kept it, and now 3 children carry it further than one man ever could. Some promises are too important to die with the person who made them. This was one of them.
And that is the story of Kael, a man who came back not for power, not for a crown, but to protect the people he loves. This is what true strength looks like. Now, I want to ask you something. If you're given a second chance like Kael, what would you come back to fix? What promise would you keep? Drop your answer in the comments below. I read every single one and reply to them. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And if you have not subscribed yet, hit that button now so you never miss the next story. Every week there is a new tale waiting for you right here on African Tales by Bams. Listen closely because every African Tales carries a lesson. This is African Tales by Bams. See you in the next one.